the Chef. I am Eliza the Chef, and today we're going to journey to France to make something really, really special. A dear friend of mine requested that we create Ratatouille, one of my favorite movies of all time, and also a delicious and really simple dish. So I hope you guys have had an awesome week. I hope that you are maintaining sanity. And I hope it wasn't too difficult to find some of the produce here. I'll go over some of the substitutions you can use if you weren't able to find all of the produce that we'd be looking for our ratatouille. This dish is typically made in southern France in the summertime, which we all wish we were in right now. But that might be why some of the produce might have been a little difficult to find. That's my timer going off because I remembered to set my oven. If you haven't done that yet and you're making crostini for this special dish, please go ahead and set your oven to 375, and that'll just make sure you're piping hot and ready to go when we put our bread in the oven. This dish in particular is definitely important to have bread or something to sop up all the goodness that's going to come from it. If you don't have one of these fancy pants, like Creuset pots to cook in, totally fine. You can absolutely use just a heavy bottom pot like we've been using for a lot of our soups and dishes we've been creating together. Totally great. So your oven should be set, 375. Grab yourself a pot, cutting board and knife. You're not going to need a whole lot of other tools. Just a colander if you have one. And then a couple sheet trays, a couple spoons and such to stir with. If you have a pastry brush, that's awesome. Not necessary. And that's about it. This is a peasant dish, so as far as your ingredients go, it can just be a lovely pantry of produce. What I'm going to be using today, this is super classic eggplant and some squash. I'm going to throw in a zucchini because I have one. A little bit of tomato. You can choose cherry tomato or Roma or great big beefsteak are awesome too. A bell pepper, onion, garlic, and some fresh basil. Relatively simple. I also am going to sneak in a little bit of my favorite ingredient, red wine. If you have a half open bottle, it would be great to use up some of that. If you want to grab just a little bit of stock just in case this starts to dry out on you, that's great too, but water will work just fine. I think everybody is here. We're going to get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is grab yourself that eggplant, and we're going to clean that and set it aside. So eggplant has this funny little hat on top and stickers if you forgot to take them off. We're just going to cut that off. There's not a whole lot that can be done with that, so I'm just going to use that bear claw, use that pinch grip, and slice right through. This piece goes into my compost, and now, because this is a relatively large eggplant, I'm going to cut it in half to give myself a little bit more leeway. I'm always trying to create these flat surfaces here. You don't have to peel the eggplant for this. We're going to do a nice rustic dish. So I'm just slicing the eggplant into slabs so I can stack those, and then that's how I'm going to dice. So I'll turn these slabs into long batons or long thin strips, and those I can turn on their head and get to dicing. Don't be too coquettish. You don't have to be too fancy about this. We're just going for a nice half-inch dice. Nice large dice here. So what I'm doing is throwing these into a colander, and we're going to throw some salt on these. The reason we're putting salt on top is to pull the water out of the eggplant. Your eggplant might start browning, and that's normal and actually okay. We want it to oxidize a little bit, and we're going to transform it by frying it up anyway, so the color won't really matter too much. But eggplant's made up of a lot of water. So in an effort to get some of that water out so we can properly fry it and cook it, we're going to throw a whole bunch of salt right on top. If you have a little puckered end on the back end of your eggplant, you can also get rid of that too. If you're substituting maybe a Japanese eggplant today, that's totally fine. The flavor's close enough that it'll be just perfect. I'm still getting through my eggplant, so I hope you are too. Nice stacks. This is actually the same exact way I would dice up a potato or even a butternut squash. I'd kind of handle the same way. Always trying to create flat surfaces, so it's really easy to run your knife right through. And again, the skin can absolutely stay on. There's a lot of nutrients in there. I know eggplant's one of those funny veggies that it's kind of difficult to use. I think that there's only a couple ways you can really cook eggplant and make it super delicious. And this is one of them. Okay, so we're gonna use at least a teaspoon of salt here to sprinkle. We're gonna let it sit for a few minutes. So I'm sprinkling a lot of salt inside of my eggplant here. Give that a little toss and then just let it set aside, right over a bowl. Make sure you got a nice coating of salt. And again, that's just gonna pull out the water for us. Whenever you're frying anything, like we're gonna do with this eggplant, you wanna make sure you get enough moisture out of it so that the water doesn't make the vegetable or whatever you're cooking steam and stick to the pan. Pulling the moisture out, we're gonna allow us to get it super crispy and delicious. I'm setting this aside. We're not gonna look at that for a few moments. Tidying my board. And onward and upward we go. Ratatouille, friends. Best movie of all time. I better come up with some references for that. So the next thing that we're gonna do is create our crostini. Ever so fancy way of saying bread. Now I've got my sheet pans ready to go here. Ooh la la. And you can absolutely use any bread you have in the house. I have these really awesome Dutch crunch rolls. Baguette is usually the typical bread you would use in France. But we're gonna use what we got in the house today. I am gonna slice these pieces into long, pretty strips. Let me show you how I do that. Typically, a crostini would be sliced into this shape. You absolutely can do it that way. For our purposes today, I wanted to get a little fancy, so I'm gonna turn my bread on a bias, and I'm gonna slice these really long, rustic, beautiful teardrop shapes, because I like a lot of bread with my dish. So you can do the same. These are just gonna get placed gently right onto a sheet tray. And make sure they're roughly the same size. You wanna try to keep them, for me, I'm going for the width of my fingernail, close to 3/4 of an inch. The excess bread, say for a snack, or you can absolutely toast it up and turn it into breadcrumbs. Use it in a stuffing if you want, or just eat it. I'm, again, on a bias, I'm slicing up this bread. And I should mention, I'm using a serrated knife to turn these crostinis, these baguettes into crostinis. The serrated knife is important for soft things like bread. We're gonna use it later on our tomatoes as well. The teeth just kind of help bite through whatever it is you're cutting up. So I'm lining up my crostinis now. Mine are a little bit thick. You can absolutely go a little thinner on yours. It's just your cook time will be slightly different. So again, about 3/4 of an inch. Ooh la la. I'm gonna throw some olive oil on that and have it for lunch. And like I said, you guys, this is a peasant dish. So this is super rustic, fresh off the farm kind of food. And so, you know, this used to be something that only the country folk would eat. So we're lucky to have it today. The next thing I'm gonna do is just drizzle a little bit of olive oil right on top. If you don't have a pastry brush, totally cool. Just use a spoon. I like to use this and get a little fancy. Throw some olive oil or even melted butter into a cup like this. You could use a mug or whatever glass you have, and just a gentle drizzle right on top. Not too much. We're not trying to make our bread too soggy. Now, obviously in France, they would use old bread to make crostini or baguette like this, right? They would, any bread that was more than a day or two old, you could just throw in the oven and turn into something more beautiful. So I measured out for myself about 1/4 to 1/2 cup of olive oil, and that's what I'm spreading onto my crostini now. Super simple, you guys. Today, the name of the game is simplicity. So I'm gonna throw this olive oil right on top. Once you've brushed all of your crostini, those puppies are ready for the oven, but not before we season. Super essential, you wanna throw a little pinch of salt. If you wanna be extra fancy and follow this technique, the higher you go, the more even you season. So if you sprinkle from up high, you perfectly season that crostini. Ooh la la, throw some over the shoulder for good luck. We're gonna put that in the oven. These are only gonna take about 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm gonna pop them in, set my timer for 10, and check on that in a few. Again, my oven's at 375. We're baking for about 10 minutes and then I'll check it. Your eggplant should already be transforming. You can see mine's already getting a little bit glistening. That's awesome. That means the water's getting pulled out. I'm gonna give that a little shake and we're gonna set it aside. See how wet that is? That's amazing. All right, setting this puppy aside. tidying my board, having a bread snack. Is everybody doing okay? I feel like this was a wild week again. So I hope everybody's surviving, and I hope this comfort food can bring you just a little joy today. Whoa. Cleanliness is next to awesomeness. Keep it tidy. All right, we're moving on to our next adventure here. Now, I'm gonna use my Le Creuset Fancy Pants dish today. You have a couple options with your cooking vessel. If you have something that has a lid like this, when we're finished with this dish, it can actually get popped right into the oven and continue cooking. If that's something you wanna do, that's a traditional way to cook it. Start it on a stovetop and finish it in the oven. Just like our pozole last week, you can actually also just keep cooking it in a great big saute pan or pot and just cook it on low for a few hours, okay? Yes?
What do we do if there's no water coming out?
If there's no water coming out of the eggplant, pinch more of salt, give it a little shaky shake, and then just let it sit. It'll come. Don't worry. Patience. It'll come. So, that being said, I'm going to do mine in my Le Creuset, and I'm going to finish mine in the oven, but you also have the option to do yours in a great big pot, and then we can just finish it on the stovetop. To start, I want to teach you guys a fun trick that I've just learned. And I'm not sure how I didn't know to do this before, but this is a brand new trick I learned this week for playing with garlic. I'm going to take apart my garlic cloves here. We're just using 4 today, so I'm going to show you how to do that. I am going to start pulling apart these guys. I might use one extra one for good luck. They're small. Sorry, Brian. So I've got my garlic ready to go here. All you have to do is put these garlic cloves into the warm pan. That's it. You don't have to think anything more about it. Skin and all, it's going right in my pan. Let that sit there for 3 to 4 minutes. You can give them a little shimmy, a little shake, but that's gonna chill out our pan. 3 things are gonna happen. We're gonna loosen the skin of the garlic. We're gonna soften the garlic, and it's gonna start caramelizing and get like just a tiny bit of a char on it. And we're also almost seasoning the pan. The garlic juices are gonna release ever so slightly into the pot here. So when I add my oil in, it's gonna give just a little hint of garlic. Love it. All right, off we go on our next adventure. We're gonna start dicing up our veggies. Yes.
What kind of heat?
Oh, thank you for asking. Medium high is perfect. As soon as you start smelling the garlic, or if you start hearing the sizzle of the papery skin, it's gonna blacken, which is what we want. We want the skin to turn a little bit black, but it's gonna help loosen the skin for us, and then it'll just kind of prematurely fry the garlic. So leave your pan on medium-high heat and just let it chill for a minute. We're gonna move on to our onion next, okay? So grab that onion, like we always do. This is a roly-poly. We're gonna take off that little papery tail end and leave the mohawk attached. So claw in place, pinch grip on my knife, resting comfortably around, holding on like a hammer. None of this today, folks. Pinch grip. Using the back end of my knife, I'm gonna slice right through that onion, place him like so. Now I have a flat surface to chop on. Using the bridge, I'm gonna slice right in half. Yes, sound effects are important. You're gonna take off this outside layer. Make sure to save that. That's gonna go in our stock. I collect my celery, carrots, onions, peelings, and those all go into my broth making. One little check to your garlic because it's gonna start to blacken. See that? A little bit of brown. And the skin is already starting to loosen. Love that. Look at that. So the natural occurring sugars in the garlic are starting to help cook this. It's starting to caramelize all by itself inside its shell. So cool. All right, I'm pulling away the peel of my onion, so a peeling. I think I've used that joke like way too many times. All right, now our onion is on the board, nice and flat. Follow these ridges. We're just gonna dice our onion. The same shape as our eggplant. Almost everything we're gonna dice today is gonna be about that 1/2 inch size. So using my claw, and now I'm using the tip of my knife, insert your knife, not going all the way to the top, keeping that root end attached. Very carefully and calmly. Enjoying the smell of that roasting garlic. Turn him on a 90-degree angle, and now I can dice. A dice, a dice, a dice. Everything is nice. Hold on to those onion peelings for me. Those are liquid gold waiting to happen. One more time, we're gonna insert the point of our knife. Whew, I think I need more coffee. And off we go, 1/2-inch dice. Turn it 90 degrees. And using the back end of my knife, I'm just gonna go ahead right down the line. A gorgeous dice. I'm gonna pull out one extra bowl. I'm gonna set this aside. Your garlic is probably almost ready. Check this out. Did you hear that sizzle? So the oils from the garlic are starting to release. We love that. Oh. All right, 1 more minute to go on these suckers. Now we're gonna pull them. Onion is ready to go. We're setting that off to the side. Now I'm waiting on the onion. If you've watched my cooking before, I always like to cook my onions off first, and then I add in a lot of the other veggies. That gives them a chance to caramelize. They kind of need their own attention, our onions. All right, friends, let's pull our garlic. Turn off your heat. I'm gonna pull out these little puppies. Oh my God, it smells so good. Okay, now you'll see the skin is already starting to kind of fall away. We love that. You can give them a little tap, just a little tap with the back of your spoon. Look at this. I love learning new tricks. It smells so good, and look how easy it is to peel. So cool. All right, now the garlic is gonna have a few black marks on it. That's okay, we love that. That means it caramelized. It actually smells like roasted garlic. If you've ever roasted whole cloves of garlic, this is the cheater way to do it super fast. And only a few cloves at a time. So these, they might be a little warm to handle, so you can totally let them cool. I know some of you are trying to be tough guys and peel them right away. But once you get the peels off, all we're gonna do is give them a little gentle tap and a rough chop, and those are gonna go into our dish a little bit later. Awesome. Super cool. Look at those babies. Oh my God. I'm never gonna cook garlic the same way again. Now, for our garlic, just a little gentle squish with the back end of the knife, and it's already starting to mash for me. Tiny pinch of salt prevents our garlic from sticking to our knife. A rough dice is all we need. Now, garlic is a really awesome flavor profile, and this is gonna be heavy on the garlic today. If you would like, you can totally tone back on the amount of garlic you're using. The French would be very mad at me because I use the little green shoot in the center. The French say you should remove that to keep your food from becoming ever so slightly bitter. I like it, so I keep it in, waste not. But just a quick little dice down the line here, you guys. And if you need a few pinches more of salt, feel free. The salt helps absorb the sugars that we just tried to bring to the surface of our garlic. So that's what prevents it from sticking to your knife and keeps you from getting super sticky. Yes!
Our delegate from France has said it worked. Awesome garlic trick. And no French is mad at you.
Thank you, Philippe. I mean, merci. Perfect. Okay, our gorgeous garlic is ready to be set aside. Frankly, I'm gonna put mine into my olive oil here and let that just chill out. I just don't like to use extra bowls when I don't have to. So just set your garlic aside. This is called the mise en place. We're getting everything in its place to start before we get cooking. Let's have another look at our eggplant. That is probably about ready to go. So I'm pulling this. You can see, look how much water's in the bottom of mine. If it was a smaller eggplant or even slightly younger, it's possible you didn't get quite as much water. But this is awesome. What you wanna do, give it a little squeeze. Try to get out those last remaining drips of water. And we're gonna start frying this puppy off. Though this is gonna be a little bit of a process because we do need to dry it ever so slightly. Grab yourself a few paper towels and we're gonna get to drying. So what you can do is line your bowl with some paper towels and do this in layers. So I'm gonna tap down and pat out some of that moisture. Again, this is a similar procedure that we use when we're searing protein. You're just trying to dry your ingredient so you can really sear it. That's my timer for my crostini. We're gonna take a peek at that as well. Going for gold here, people, going for gold. Yeah, not ready. We need like 5 more minutes, friends. At least for me. Go ahead and check yours. Make sure they're not burning or browning. and those will be ready shortly. So the eggplant has only been sitting for about 10 minutes. Typically, you could let this sit for up to 20 minutes and totally drain out. We're pushing forward today, but the next time you make it, feel free to let it sit even longer in that salt mixture we made to get even more moisture out. Now, when I dry this second layer, what I'm gonna do is start heating up my oil. We're gonna put about 1/4 cup of olive oil into the bottom here. What does that mean? 4 tablespoons, 1/4 cup, or just coat the bottom of the pan. Let's not get too crazy here. Now, some of the garlic might still be left, some of that garlic flavoring. There might be some peelings in there. Make sure to pull those out before we start frying our eggplant. And a really good dry is super important here, you guys. I'm gonna add another layer of paper towels to get these suckers super dry. Ooh la la! It's okay if brown liquid is releasing. That's normal. No problem. See, I have brown liquid all over my table. That's fine. That's exactly what we want. Nobody panic. Now we're gonna finish drying while that olive oil is heating up. I always heat my oil first in an effort to make sure it is evenly hot, so it's ready to take on whatever produce or piece of meat I'm frying. It also helps not to get that awful schlick or that layer of brown all around the outer edge of your pot or pan, whatever you're using. All right, we've successfully also seasoned this eggplant. So we've already started to season our dish by salting this eggplant. It absorbed the salt, the sodium chloride flavor, and the water all came out thanks to that. So that's awesome. Let's put in 1 trial go. Ooh la la. If you hear the sizzle music, you can throw in about 2 handfuls of eggplant. We love it, we love it. It might sputter a little bit because there's still some water left on the outside. That's okay, that's okay. Let those cook for just a minute and then we'll add our second batch here. If you have a larger pot or pan, that's awesome. It's gonna help you cook even more evenly than this. Our goal here is to have high heat to really start frying. We're trying to caramelize this eggplant. We're trying to fry it off. Love that. Love that. Now keep your paper towels, set those aside. We're gonna need to pull these out after they're done cooking and let them dry on a paper towel lined plate or bowl. I'm just gonna add a little bit more oil. Keep an eye on your oil level. Eggplant is like a sponge, so it's gonna try to soak up all of that oil. If you don't see a nice layer of oil on the bottom of your pan, just add a little more. Olive oil is medicine, so the more the merrier, I say. Fab. This is gonna take some patience. Let that chill out for a few moments. We're gonna let that cook and caramelize, get a little crunchy, a little crispy. I'm gonna grab myself some more new paper towels and I'm gonna check on my crostini. Ooh, crostini. Mine still need about 4 more minutes. Magnifique. Okay, here we go, pals. I'm letting this fry away here. Your pot or pan may be slightly larger than mine or slightly smaller, depending on what you decided to use. So yours might cook at a different rate. If our eggplant was diced up at a slightly different dice, again, we might be cooking at different rates here. But this is gonna take about 5 to 7 minutes to really fry up. Here's what we're looking for. We want all sides to have that gorgeous caramelization, that kind of crust that starts to form when you fry. Set it and forget it for a moment. We're moving on to our squash here, people. If you weren't able to find a beautiful summer squash like this guy, totally cool, use a zucchini. I'm gonna use both today. So I've got my lovely looking yellow bella here. Take off, this is actually just like the eggplant. We're gonna take off that little root end. That's where the blossom would have grown. And the little tail end. And this guy, very similar to the eggplant, we're gonna go ahead and slice into slabs, okay? Now, here's the deal. Typically, in the French technique would be to slice into these gorgeous thin rings, and then we would shingle all of this into our pan. Do we have time for that today? I don't think so. I'm gonna go ahead and make mine super rustic. We're just dicing this up. Now, here's how I would do a typical squash or zucchini. Get your slab pieces happening. I'm using the claw to brace my squash right up against my bear claw. And I'm gonna turn this into batons. Yes, what's our question?
Chef Eliza,
Yeah.
what is the difference between a summer squash and a zucchini?
Oh my gosh, great question! Well, summer squash and zucchini are both beautiful summer produce. The summer squash here, this little guy, is gonna be a little bit more delicate, a little bit softer, a tiny bit sweeter, but this guy is gonna be just as delicious. So it's a little bit heartier. You'll see if you have both of them and you're slicing through them, this yellow squash is just a little bit more delicate. It's a little softer, whereas the zucchini is a little heartier. Either way, it's great. The reason the ratatouille gets cooked with the summer squash is, again, because it's a southern French summer dish. So these are everywhere in the summertime. That was such a good question. Can you use either? 100%. We're still letting our eggplant fry off. Give it a nice little turn and a touch. And again, if you don't see that layer of oil in the bottom, add a bit more oil. Like I said, eggplant's a sponge. It's just gonna try to absorb all of that olive oil, okay? Off I go again, another mise en place bowl. We're not frying this off just yet. We're getting ready. If you want to use 2 of those squash, that's great. If you don't want to, you can absolutely just grab your zucchini. If you were making this in the fall, a really fun play on this is to use butternut squash instead of the zucchini we have. It just takes a little bit longer to cook. As I mentioned with the eggplant, I'm gonna make this a little more manageable for my knife. So now I have 2 flat surfaces I can cut. Cutting these into slabs. Now I have my slabs. I can cut my batons. Making my batons, I turn them 90 degrees and I dice. So nice. Now a reminder that your produce is gonna shrink. So if it's a little bit larger, that's okay. It's gonna shrink by about 1/3 when all the water releases. Just a nice 1/2-inch dice is great. This particular recipe is a spin-off of Alice Waters' recipe. It comes together really quickly. The Julia Child version would cook for about 2.5 hours. We're gonna cook ours a little bit faster today. The Alice Waters version really only cooks for about an hour. So here we go. I'm almost finished with my zucchini. My eggplant is nearly there. Take a look at yours as well. Trying to get a nice caramelization here, you guys. Beautiful. Yes. Oh, is that my timer? Thank you, trusty assistant. So amazing, Brian. Let me check on my crusty. Okay, you guys, we're nearly there. 4 more minutes on mine. Keep saying 4 more minutes. So these are a little bit thicker. They're taking me about 15 to 20 minutes, and that's okay. That's totally fine. Our eggplant is almost ready to come out, okay? Perfect. We're gonna pull that in just a moment. Grab yourself your bell pepper next. We're gonna clean that and move along here. You know what? We're gonna pull our eggplant, you guys. I think it's ready. Mine's got a nice little brown. It's okay that these little bits are staying behind. That's all right. We love that. That's gonna help season the rest of our dish. So what you can do is pull your eggplant. Remember, line your bowl or plate or whatever you're using to pull this onto with a little paper towel. I'm gonna use a slotted spoon so I leave some of the oil behind. I'm gonna let my eggplant chill out over here. Just let it chill for a moment. This is gonna get added back in, so as long as it's cooked through right now, you're good to go. And right into this pan, I'm gonna add just a little bit more oil. Touch more olive oil. And we're gonna get those onions in. The onion's acid is gonna help release some of that skin, and it's just gonna fry up beautifully. So onions go in first. Let those caramelize for roughly 1.5 to 2 minutes. And then we'll start adding in our next ingredient. Definitely scrape the bottom of your pan to get up some of that crispy eggplant bit, okay? Give that a nice scrape. We want all that goodness. So, eggplant got removed, set aside. If you're still catching up, no problem, take your time. The next thing that goes in is more olive oil, and now our onions. We want those to fry up and get translucent. We're not going for full-fledged brown onions, but we do want them to lose some of their harsh taste, okay? If you're using a red onion or a shallot, beautiful, love that. I'm gonna start working on my bell pepper next. When we're handling a bell pepper, the best way to take apart this guy quickly is to slice off that top end, save that, we're gonna dice that in a moment, flip them 180 degrees, take off those little feet, and now I should be able to see right through my eggplant. What you can do next, using the back end of your knife, find one of these little ridges to insert your knife into, and gradually open up your red bell pepper. See that? If you slide your knife along the inside skin, that's what helps kind of contain this in a little packet of seeds. Get rid of that. Now I can slice this guy into 3 different pieces, keeping that skin side down on the cutting board. The skin side is highly acidic. There's a lot of vitamin C in bell peppers. So this is great. We want to keep the skin side down so it's easier on your knife. Slice that into long, thin batons. Same thing, you guys. We're getting repetitive. You're going to be dicing masters at the end of this. Give those onions a stir if you haven't. They're starting to caramelize for me. Ooh la la. We love it. We love it. We love it. Yes. Okay. Quick break. We're going to add in our zucchini and squash next. Zucchini and squash is going into our bowl. And we're going to let that caramelize with the onions. Carry on that bell pepper. Once you've got your zucchini and squash in your bowl. Perfect. I'm going to add the bell pepper in next. I'm just dicing this up, a very quick, easy dice. Line up your batons. We're going for 1/2 inch dice, same shape, same size as our other pieces of veggies. Lovely. Now this part can be a little tricky, no problem. Just take this apart and turn it into roughly the same size as the batons we just diced up. Again, this ratatouille is super rustic, you guys. There's no need to get too finicky about perfectly dicing. Just go for roughly the same size so it all cooks evenly. Oh, bell pepper. Now, the red bell peppers are the oldest, so they're gonna be the sweetest. Could you substitute a green or a yellow or an orange? Absolutely. The flavor is just gonna be slightly different. This one has the highest amount of sugar. Off we go, bell peppers in. Oh my goodness, it's like summertime in my bowl. So nice. All right, you guys, I hope it's smelling delicious. Now would be a good time to season once more. Nice heavy pinch of salt, maybe 2. And checking on our crostini. Nice. Okay, you guys, here's the deal. My crostini's finished, and this is how I know. When I tap it, it makes a hard sound. It feels like a crouton, and it gets this really beautiful golden brown color on it. That's what we want, that gorgeous golden brown. My favorite color. We're gonna let that cool down. Let those chill. And we're back to our gorgeous ratatouille. Yum. Now, if you're feeling extra frisky today, you can add in a little pinch of chili flake as well. Love that. If you were trying to Americanize your dish just a little bit, you could even dice up some jalapeno and add it with the bell pepper. For us today, I'm just using a couple pinches of chili flakes, and we're good to go. I know you guys are getting pizza delivered, so I know you have chili flakes in the house. We all keep those packets. All right, I'm giving that a little stir, and I'm gonna add in my garlic next. We're gonna let this all simmer together, get all those flavors to bind and unlock and wind themselves together here. Make sure you're scraping the bottom of your pan, especially if you have something that's not ceramic like this. It might be sticking a little bit. That's okay. I'm going to show you a trick to get everything off the bottom in just a moment. Some of the squash and the bell pepper are gonna start releasing some of their liquid, which is gonna help with our dish. But I'm gonna add a little bit, my secret liquid, in just a moment. One last thing to chop up here, you guys. Our recipe called for 2 large tomatoes. I'm gonna use 1 tomato large, and then I'm gonna use some cherry tomatoes, just for kicks. I think cherry tomatoes for me are a little bit sweeter, and they cook a little bit faster, so the sugars unlock a little bit more quickly. To clean a large tomato like this, I would recommend using a serrated knife, and that's because of the high acidity in your tomatoes. And it's also just because the skin of the tomato is hard on your knife. It can actually like dull your knife a little bit quickly. So if you use a serrated knife, it saves you a little bit. We're gonna take off the top end of that tomato. And now what you can do, using that bear claw, watch this trick, keeping that flat side down. If you keep them mound together, you can give it a 90-degree turn. This only really works with a serrated knife or a super sharp knife. You can dice right through. Now I have these flat pieces I can pull away. And I can dice right down the line. Ta-da! Now, your tomatoes can be a nice rustic shape. That's okay. They're gonna unleash some of their juices here. So they're gonna fall apart a little bit more readily. We want that. We want them to kind of get smashed and mushed up in this dish because their juice is what makes the whole sauce for our ratatouille. Okay? Look how gorgeous those colors are! Oh my god. All right, I'm dicing up the last of my tomatoes. Skins and all, they're going right in there. Ooh la la. Now, my tricky trick for our tomatoes. This is how I quickly slice up my cherry tomatoes. I stack them all up. You can use the top of a quart container or any kind of to-go container and place it right on top to protect your fingers. I'm just gonna use my hand for now, and I'm gonna use that serrated knife, holding my tomatoes together with the palm of my hand. Again, you could use a lid or a top to help keep your hand safe. You just slice right through, right down the middle. Keep them all kind of bound together. If you have pressure on them, it'll help keep them steady and still. Da 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 da, have tomatoes. Give those a little pinch of salt. That unlocks some more of that juice for us. Again, salt is our magic ingredient. It pulls out all of the water, and that's what's gonna help with our dish. So I'm deglazing with the tomato juice. Deglazing means pulling off everything that's on the bottom, whatever fond was left behind. But that might not be quite enough. So for me, I'm gonna add in a little splash. This is a little sacrilegious, the French might not do this. We're gonna add in just a little splash of red wine. Just a dash, quarter cup maximum. Now, that liquid, we're gonna let cook down until it smells sweet. We don't wanna smell much acidity anymore. But you can see the wine is helping to pull all of that gorgeous stuff off the bottom. And the acid from the wine is binding with the fat from the olive oil. So it's making this rich, kind of decadent sauce for us. We love that. Magnifique, beautiful. Yes!
A couple comments. One is my favorite thing about this is watching how you cut veggies. And then our French delegate has had his mind blown via emoji.
Boom!
And then
Ratatouille of the ages.
Our El Salvadorian delegate has added champagne.
Whoa! Extra French. Oh, I love that trick. We love that. I hope that was for mimosas this morning. Okay, you guys, the only thing that's left to do is let this puppy cook. We're gonna add in our eggplant in a few minutes. What I'm looking for is for the tomatoes to kind of cook down. Just like our marinara and just like our pozole, this dish gets sweeter and the flavor profile gets richer the longer it cooks. So could you serve this right away? The Alice Waters version says, yes, you could absolutely have this to eat in the next 10 to 12 minutes. For me, I like to cook this down a little bit longer and let the tomatoes really turn sweet. The longer you let the acidity cook out of the tomatoes, the more rich their sugars get. So if you want it to be a little bit more of a rich profile flavor, then you're gonna let it cook a bit longer. And again, if you want, you can let it simmer away at low for the next hour and a half. Or you can put it in our 375-degree oven and let it bake for another hour. If you have something to cover it, make sure it has a lid, whether that's aluminum foil or a top like I have today. I'm gonna throw my eggplant back in just a moment. The eggplant is gonna turn a little bit mushy again once it gets put back in here. It's gonna absorb some of the tomato juices. That's fine, that's great. But because we helped coat it and sear it a little bit, it's gonna keep it a bit more intact, if that makes sense. It's not gonna quite dissolve as much and get super duper mushy. It'll have that little skin and a little flavor on it. While we're waiting to add in our eggplant, I'm gonna also show you how to chiffonade our beautiful fresh herb. Now, if I was in a restaurant, I would totally put what's called a bouquet of basil into this now. What does that mean? Basically, it means I take some basil leaves, I tie some twine around it, and I place it inside, buried into the dish, and let that cook together. If you don't want to take that step, don't worry. Here's what you can do instead. You can absolutely grab your basil, and we're going to take this apart, and we'll add it at the very end of the cooking. Yes, we have a question.
Did you add the garlic already?
I sure did. Go ahead and add that garlic in. That went in right around the same time, right before our tomatoes went in. But that's okay, you can just add it in now. It'll be perfect, it'll be perfect. Mine's starting to get really juicy and I'm trying to get the tomatoes to fall apart a little bit. Come have a look. So here's my bouquet stuck in the corner. That, if you've decided to take that road and put a little bouquet in and stuff it in, make sure you remove that before you eat it. It can get a little bitter if it sits for too long in there, and you don't want to take a bite of wilted basil. What you can do, if you want to skip this step, no problem. We're going to stack up our leaves here. Roll these puppies up like a little cigar or a little paper towel tube. Using your knife, using the pinch grip, and the back end here, we're going to just create these thin ribbons. Nice thin ribbons, a chiffonade. Once you got those, you can actually store these in a damp paper towel. They'll keep in your fridge for a day or so. At the very end of cooking, add in your basil leaves. It'll keep that really fresh, bright green flavor, and it just maintains the dignity of the herb a little bit more. Basil's really delicate, so if you can wait until the very end of cooking, right before you serve, mix this basil into your gorgeous dish, and it'll be perfect. I'm gonna add my eggplant back in. So by now, you should have all of your ingredients except the basil in your pot cooking away, okay? We started with our onions. I'll run through the recipe one more time. We started with our onions and we let those caramelize. While those were cooking, we added in our delicious, excuse me, I'm so sorry you guys, let me start again. We fried our eggplant first and foremost. Then we added in our onions to cook after we pulled those out. Next, we started sauteing our squash and our zucchini and our bell pepper. Then we added in the tomatoes, and if you're using it, a red wine or a champagne if you're feeling fancy. Now we're letting this cook down. Turn your heat. See how I'm starting to lose some of my moisture here? Turn your heat down to low. You want to turn it down to low and let this puppy just simmer away. You can let it cook for another hour. If you're losing a lot of moisture, you can choose to add a few more tomatoes diced up, or you can add in a little splash of stock. Perfect. Just a little dash. Just a little dash of stock. Now, reminder, I haven't covered mine yet, so I still have the chance to let some liquid cook off. Once you cover it, all of this is going to kind of steam itself, so the liquid will stay intact. Just another light little mash here. And you have some beautiful ratatouille, you guys. Again, reminder, before you serve this, you can either pop, right now, you can leave it simmering on the stove for another 30 to 60 minutes, taste as you go, decide what you like. You can also pop it in that 375-degree oven for another hour and let it cook and meld and get a little bit richer and sweeter. When it comes off the stove or out of the oven, then we add in the basil to finish it. If you put this in now, it's gonna brown. So try to save that to the very end, okay? Beautiful. Now, a demonstration on how to eat our beautiful ratatouille. Yes, we have a question before that.
Did you pull the bouquet?
I pulled mine out. You leave it, if you're putting it in the oven, you can leave it in there. I pulled it out so I didn't accidentally mix it in. Yes.
Follow-up question, simmer with the basil, okay?
Yes, that's perfect. Simmering with that basil bouquet, as long as you don't mix it in too much. Just let it kind of chill in the corner. That's great.
Our delegate from France says the professional and right way to do it is to let it simmer for approximately 3 glasses of wine.
3 glasses of wine is an excellent timing method. Please follow. We are going to now add a little bit of this to our lives. This is just how I would serve it and eat it. Dun, dun, dun. So you guys feel free to play with this ratatouille recipe. Let me know how it went. If you added other veggies or you decided to create something slightly different, let me know. I'm gonna let mine simmer away on super low for the next hour. Let me cover it. We're in cover mode here. Ooh la la. And you can serve this as an appetizer or as the main course. This is such a beautiful rustic dish. There's a reason there's a movie named after it. Thank you guys for joining me today for our really special ratatouille adventure. It's been a pleasure to have you in my kitchen, and I hope you're all hanging in there and doing well. Ratatouille, bonjour, magnifique. I'll practice my French for the next time. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again soon. I'm Eliza the Chef. Take care.